second one is going to be a little bit different. It's a podcast type style. So I plan on maybe doing one of these like once a week in addition to the videos I do. So let me know what you guys think of this type of style after you watch this video and your feedback on it. And other than that, this video is going to be on the idea of understanding the story that we tell ourselves. Now, if we were to break down everything in our lives and the identity that we have that we continue to perpetuate over and over again, we'll find that it's most likely almost all of the things that we identify ourselves to be comes from a story that we tell ourselves. Now, I want to give you guys an analogy of understanding the story we tell ourselves and the conditioning that we a lot of times have been a part of, because we go through certain experiences. Maybe if we experience a little bit of pain, we learn not to step outside those boundaries, so we continue to think in the same way, and it's almost like a little box we create around ourselves, thinking that we can't really go outside those boundaries. So a lot of times we end up living in reaction to our environment rather than really just like taking our power back. Now, when I say this, think of the metaphor, for example, of an elephant. An elephant, and this is like a classic example that maybe you've even heard before, but if you take a baby elephant in the circus and you put a little pin, you put like a stake into the ground with a rope on it connected to the elephant will try to get away, but because the elephant is so small, it can't actually tear the stake out of the ground and get away. Well, what'll happen is if that elephant is like that all growing up, maybe for however many years, eventually that elephant will be huge, many, like maybe tons or thousands of pounds, but will still think that it can't break out of that little stake that's in the ground. Now, why is that? Like, the elephant could easily pull that stake out when it gets bigger, but it doesn't do it because of that conditioning. Now, a lot of us live in a similar type of conditioning. Maybe we have a dream that we want to go after. Maybe we have something that we want to accomplish, but we don't even take action in the first place because we don't even think that we're able to step outside the boundaries. A lot of times it's kind of a metaphor. Like, we want to step outside the boundaries of something, but it's really just stepping outside of our comfort zone in our mind of what we think is possible or even probable. But we can do that just based on making a decision to do it, and many times dropping the story of who we think we are. Now, to talk about this, let's understand our identity of how we define ourselves to be. And what I'm going to do is kind of explain some experiences from my own life, just to show you how I reframed the stories to really get a benefit out of them. Now, with that being said, I've talked about it a little bit in prior videos, and I'm no way saying these things to like say, pity on me, look at what I went through type thing, because honestly, I know most people have been through a lot of shit growing up. I'm not saying that what I've been through is like the worst of the worst or anything like that. But between the ages of like 7 to 15, I lived under like kind of like a military type like household in a way. Like, my dad met somebody that was my ex-stepmom. She was very strict, had a very kind of manipulative type attitude. And because of that, me and my brother went from having freedom, like allowed to be with friends, allowed to watch TV and stuff, to all of a sudden no TV. We had to work outside almost all the time. We had like a little bit of property. I grew up in Vegas, but we grew up on a little bit of like half an acre. So me and my brother, a lot of times were locked outside, meant to just like do work and stuff like that. We weren't allowed to really have a social life at all, except for just going to school and coming home. And there was a lot of like emotional, like mental, and just like, certain type of what you could call abuse involved. And when I say that, it's not from pity at all. It's from just awareness that that's what I went through. And the reason I say that is because actually somebody recently on my YouTube vid commented and said something from one of my videos, said like, oh, you're very like pleasant, like your attitude is so good. You must have had a really good upbringing. And I kind of laughed at that, because it's kind of like, if you only knew a lot of the things that I've been through, you would know that maybe the reason I am the way I am is because of the shit that I went through, to realize that like, you don't have it that bad if you have some type of freedom, even if you have internet connection, it's not that bad, because between the ages of 7 to 15, I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I wasn't allowed to be on the internet. Wasn't allowed to do really anything except for chores around the house. and go to school and come back. Like, part of the reason I did well in school was because it was an escape from home. So therefore, it was like a way for me to actually do things that, was not chores necessarily. Now, with that being said, I remember when I turned 15 and my dad divorced her. That's kind of like when it happened. Me and my brother all of a sudden had all this freedom. We were allowed to hang out with people. We were allowed to do things. We were allowed to eat what we wanted to eat, because before that we got like these little meals of things we could eat. So we were like kind of malnourished in a way. And we really had to learn how to be social and how to like relate to people and stuff like that, because for years we were kind of secluded into just like doing chores all the time. Now, when I say that, one thing I had to go through was, first off, being okay with all this freedom that I had. But then what happened was I had to reframe a lot of what happened, because I could have looked at it from a very negative point of view and said, looking back at that, why did all of that happen? Did I deserve this? Am I unworthy? And when I looked at it, I realized that I could look at it from that point of view. And for a while I did. First off, I was just excited to have freedom and be able to do things that I wasn't able to do before. But eventually it kind of brought me down, because I would like internalize it in a way. But then something happened where I read a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in this book, there's like a saying in there that always stuck with me. And it's the saying about the fact that in every negative situation, there's a seed with an equal amount of positive in it. It just takes us to see that positivity, to what that could be. Now, with that being said, I've always believed this to be true. And I've always given out this advice because I really believe in it. And what I did is I looked at my past, and I did look at it from a positive point of view. Now, not like a airy-fairy type idea of that was so positive, like that was such a pleasant experience. More of the idea of that was something that I really learned from. Like, I learned how to deal with someone that was very manipulative, very controlling. And because of that, it made me really understand psychology in like a funny way, right? It really made me turn into a rebel. Like, a lot of times when we're told what to do by society, sometimes government, sometimes, certain things, I really encourage people to think for themselves, and I choose to think for myself. And maybe I wouldn't be kind of a rebel type idea if I didn't go through that type of experience. And from that, I turned into a positive person who was really able to see good in things, because I kind of had to for that period of my life. Me and my brother would be excited if we could do some of the simplest things sometimes. If we could sneak into the house and watch like half an hour of TV or something like that, like we were, that was a good day. We were stoked for it. We had to hide it, but it was something that we learned how to like make the best of every situation, kind of. Now, with all that being said, the power in this is in dropping that story. So everything that I just told you is a story. And the way that we do this is through the simple formula I'm going to give you. Now, look at it like this. I'm going to give you a little Venn diagram right over here. And in one side of it, you can look at it from what actually happened. We can categorize something that actually happened. And then in another Venn part of it, we can see it from the point of view of the story we tell ourselves about what happened. Now, a lot of times what will happen is our identity of who we think we are, we tag ourselves under the story that we tell ourselves about what happened. So we take ourselves away from what actually happened, and we develop a whole bunch of stories about it and a way that we identify ourselves with it, and that a lot of times will hold us down. Now, the way that we can look at it is like this. So from that whole situation that I went through, I could have looked at it and said, oh, this means I'm unworthy. This means that maybe I don't deserve this, or there's just different ways I could have looked at it that could have really brought me down. But what I'd learned to do is to, instead of looking at that story of that identification and the way I could have related to it, I looked at it as just simply it happened. It's just something that happened. And that neutralizes the power that it has over us, because when we say it happened, we are accepting the actual situation itself, and when we accept it, we can then let it go. If we are in denial of it happening or in resistance to the fact that it did happen, we're not going to change. But if we just realize and we accept the fact that it happened, that's when we actually begin to gain our power back. So what I encourage you to do is to understand that a lot of our identity and who we think we are is tagged onto a memory that we have. What you can do is look at that memory and ask yourself, what are the most dominant memories in my mind? Then what you can do is choose to see it from 2 points of views. You can see it as what happened and the story that we told ourselves about what happened. And then what you can do is realize that you can detach from the story we told ourselves about what happened. And we can even detach from what happened, but we have to first accept it, because when we accept it, we can then release it. If we resist it, we're actually holding on to it. So realize that the story we tell ourselves a lot of times is holding us down from actually taking action in the present moment or really living to the full capacity that we could. Now let's look at this from a point of reframing maybe everyday things that happen to us. Like, imagine maybe you have a coworker who's in like a bad state or something just happened, and they snap at you at some little thing you said. Now, one way that we could respond to that is we could tell ourselves a story about we're more worthy than this. Why would they talk like that to us? We have this expectation that they need to respond to us in a certain way. Why didn't they respect who I am? All these stories about what should have happened and about what did happen. Or we can just look at it and say, look, it happened. That person is in that state and said that. We can see it from a point of view of understanding that that person is rationalizing however they're acting based upon the state that they're in. You see, when we look at things from that point of view, what we really begin to do is we begin to shift ourselves from a point of reacting to the story or reacting to the ideologies to then just being in the moment and accepting it as it is. But the way that we reframe it is by understanding and knowing that everything happens for a reason, and that reason is whatever we label it as. So maybe if that person snaps at us, we can take that as a moment for us to really decide who we are and if we need validation. We can say, maybe I'm going to validate myself more rather than needing that person to validate me. You see, it's a different way of thinking about it, but we can reframe everything that happens in our life by understanding that everything that we think to be true about ourselves is because of a story we tell ourselves. So what I encourage you to do is to start telling yourself a new story. Are you telling yourself the story that you are worthy, that you can be successful, that you can own your own business if that's what you want to do, or you can make more money than you're making now? Reframe the things that have happened in your past and understand that as you begin to reframe them, you then begin to change yourself in the present moment and the way that you relate to your environment. What you can then do is accept anything that's happened in your past, just accept it for what it is, and then just simply let it go and understand that as you let it go, the negative energy that's around that gets released from who you are. So the power is within you to decide that you're going to learn from any situation that happens, that even a negative situation that happens, there's a positive seed in there, and all you have to do is see it as either a lesson or something that you can grow from. Sometimes the pain gives us pressure to actually pull ourselves through to then become more than we were before. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you may be able to learn a little bit more about the story you're telling yourself, and I encourage you to just understand that that power is within you. So feel free to like this video if you liked it, share it if you found it of value, and let me know in the comments if you like this style video, and I'll see you guys on the next vid. All right, peace, much love, namaste. All right, bye.